Hello, class. This week we're going to be looking at volume, but really the goal is to have to find three numbers that multiply together to give a product, or you probably say an answer. And we're also going to be looking at mental strategies, and we'll talk all about those things as we go. Let's get started. So the first shape here, we see a rectangular prism, and we see, here's a rectangular prism, and we see that the volume is 56 units cubed. So it's kind of backwards. It's giving you the volume, and you have to find three dimensions that give you that volume, or like I just said, three numbers that together that equal 56, right? So the first thing I notice is that 56 is an even number, right? Because it ends in a 6. So if I take 56 and I divide it by 2, I already get 28. So I'm going to take that, okay, because it's an even number, and I could say that 2 times 28 equals 56, right? Now, you're probably thinking, okay, that's great, but that's two numbers and not three numbers. Well, I can break up this number here into two more numbers, and then the next thing you know, I'll have three numbers. So I'll keep the 2. And then this one, two numbers that multiply together to equal 28. Are you thinking? Do you have a number? Okay, you can pause. All right, so two numbers that equal 28 would be 7 and 4. So if you said 7 and 4, good for you. Okay, now if I look at my rectangular prism, I could see that this here is 2 units. Okay, so I drew it to size. Over here, it's 4 units. Okay, and then if I take my pointer and I count up, so here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the height is 7 units, right? Now, you might remember the formula for volume, which we can put in. So volume equals length times width times height. So I can say that we'll say that the length is 4, the width is 2, and the height is 7, right? Now, 4 times 2 times 7, well, we already know that 28 is involved somehow, but anyway, is 56, and it's 56 units cubed. Okay. Now, maybe the challenge to you is to figure out, is there another way to draw a rectangular prism that has 56 units cubed? And the answer is yes, but we're not going to do that in the video because then the video will be quite long. Okay, so let's move on. So here we have three numbers that multiply together, and we have to find the product. Now, we want to use a mental strategy. Now, a mental strategy doesn't just mean you do it in your head. So sometimes students come to me with their work and they're like, here's the answer. How'd you get that? I did it in my head. They think that's mental math, but really it's not. Mental math does involve writing and showing what's going on in your head and coming up with an answer by using strategies that you already know. Okay, so the first strategy we're going to do is called commutative property. Okay, I'll write it here. Commutative property. Right? So it's commutative. Now, commutative means that in multiplication, you can move the numbers around in any order, and they'll always equal the same thing, right? So if I say that all of this is equal to W, just a random variable, if all of that is equal to W, it doesn't matter if it's 2 times 5 times 8, 8 times 5 times 2, I can move the numbers around. It'll always equal W, or the product that is the correct answer. So I'm going to move it around, and one of the reasons I'm going to move it around, and actually in this one, I don't really have to move it around, but I could say that 8 times 5 times 2, so I just moved everything around, it's still W, right? And that's what commutative property is. But basically what I wanted is that these two numbers here are together, right? The 5 and the 2. And the reason why they're together is because it'll create a friendly number, and you'll see. So 5 times 2 is 10, times 8, Okay, so just like that, I got rid of two numbers, right? And now 10 times 8 is a friendly number, and it's 80. Okay, so that means that all of this is equal to 80, right? Well, maybe I'll get rid of the variable so that you could kind of see. So all of this is equal to 80, okay? Let's try another strategy. Now, this strategy here, it has a name, but now I'm forgetting. You could take numbers and split them up, right? Because if you do 5 times 12 times 3, you're thinking, I don't really know the answer. But if you do something differently, you could probably come up with it using a mental strategy, okay? So I'm going to take 12 and I'm going to split it up, right? So it's 5 times, and then two numbers that multiply together to equal 12. Okay, hopefully you got 6 and 2. And then 3. Okay, now you're probably thinking, now it's 4 numbers that you have to multiply. Does that make it harder? Not really. It help you later on. But now I could even rewrite it and switch the numbers around, because right away I noticed that, 5 and 2, if I put them together, it'll create the same friendly number from the previous question. So I'll go 5 times 2 times 6 times 3. So I just took all the numbers and I moved them around. Now, 5 times 2 is 10. And then 6 times 3 is 18. Okay? And then here we are with a friendly number again. So 10 times 10 times 18 is 180. And there we go. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, now feel free to pause the videos if you think I'm going too fast and you want to listen again. But I'm trying to make the video short. So this question here, you know how I feel about algebra. So it has a variable, and the variable is b. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a number family. Okay, so number families are what you've been using in primary grades, and it doesn't disappear. It's still the same ideas, right? So what I'm going to do, well, first we'll do commutative. So b times 9 is equal to 72, okay? Well, that means I could do the commutative property. I could just switch the numbers around, and I could say 9 times b is still 72. It's commutative, right? The numbers just switch, but the product stays the same. We can put some division in there, right? So 72 divided by b, okay, you're just throwing the numbers around. So 72 divided by b is, okay, hopefully you said 9, right? And then the final one is probably the most important. There is b. Now, the reason why I said this one is most important is because the variable is isolated. And I want you to remember that, especially when you get into older grades. Because this variable is isolated, whatever's on this side, right, will give you the answer to b. Now, if you know your multiplication tables, right, maybe you know that 9 times 9 is 81, and then it has to be less. 72 divided by 9, or I could even say 9 times 8, right? So 72 divided by 9 is 8. So b is equal to 8. Now, if that didn't come to you, I could use a calculator, and I could say, you could say, well, 72 divided by 9. So there's nothing wrong with using a calculator to check your work. But like I said before, mental math means that you've used a mental strategy that you could show on paper. Okay. This is the final question. It looks like 2, but they actually go together. Now, to do this question, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to add something to it. So it gives you that 10 times 18 is 180. And it's telling you to use that equation to help you with m times 18 to equal 216. So the goal is to find the value of m, right? Now, with 10 times 18 equal to 180, I'm also going to add that 20 times 18. So it's basically doubled. I'm gonna double it. So 10 is a friendly number, and you could also say that 20 is a friendly number. So if 180 doubles, okay, now if you think of a circle, it's 360 degrees. So 180 and then 360. So if that helps you. So 20 times 18 is 360. Now, again, the number doesn't come to you. I mean, there's nothing wrong with using a calculator to help you check that because but it not necessarily to give you an answer. So if I double it, it's 360, right? Now, I have to look at, now 360 helps you with actually both of these questions. The second one is easier. So we'll start with m times 18 is equal to 378, right? Now, if you look at 378 and you look at 360, the reason why it's easier is because if you subtract the two, you'll get 18. So what does that tell you? Okay, well, you can think about it. Well, basically it means that the answer is close to 20 times 18, right? So if we try maybe 21 times 18, okay, we would get the answer, right? So I go 21 times 18 equals 378, right? So that means that m is equal to 21, okay? So we take a question that we know, which is 20 times 18 to help us with the other question, right? Now, you can almost do the same thing with the next one because 360 and 216, well, they're a little bit off, but how about 180? So 180 and 216. So if you subtract, if I take 216 and I subtract 180, okay, I get 36, right? Now, 36, so I know that 18 times 2 is 36, right? So that might help you with the answer. I could also try maybe a guess and check. I could say, well, how about 11? 11 times 18. So if 10 times 18 is 180, 11 times 18 is 198. Okay, now we're about 18 away from 216. So that means that the answer would be 12. So 12 times 18 is 216, right? And I can always just check with a calculator. All right, calculators are fine for that, and I get 216, right? So again, it's a mental strategy. You take what you know to sort of help you come up with a product or an answer that maybe you don't know yet, okay? So to quickly review what we did, we started all the way over here with volume, and we found three numbers that multiply together to equal the volume of 56 units cubed. Then we learned about the commutative property, how you can move numbers around in a multiplication question, and you'll still get the same product, right? And we did that to achieve a friendly number, so that 10 times 8 is 80, okay? Next, we learned that you could split up a number, so 12, you can say 6 times 2. Now you have four numbers, right? And then we decided, okay, we'll move them around again. And then we had 10 times 18. So creating four numbers actually made it easier to solve for the product. And then finally, oh, no, not finally, we did a number family. So we moved numbers around, right? So that we could isolate a variable. And then we knew that, and then we found out that b is equal to 8. And now I'll say finally, this is, probably the most involved, is that what we did is we learned that we were given this, which is a friendly number. We added on to it because we said, well, if we do this, it might help us more. So we take what we knew to help us with larger products. And there's a lot of thinking skills involved. So when you're doing your math, don't just run to a calculator to solve it. Like, you use a calculator for support, but the mental strategy means you take what you know to help you with a product that you might not know. Okay, thank you for listening.